Well, we're back again this week. My name's Mark Crutcher, president of Life Dynamics, and again, I'm with the usual suspects. Let's go from this side this time.
Sure,
We always start with you, right?
Okay.
The last shall be first.
The last shall be first. And you were the youngest in your family, so here
Yes.
you are. Elizabeth McClung from Texas Right to Life, and Melissa Conway from Texas Right to
Yes.
Life, and of course, one of the worst of the usual suspects, my trusty sidekick, Renee Hobbs. Hello, Renee.
Hello.
We had some stories this week came out. Actually, one of them was from a 2015 report, but it just hit the news here apparently. In France, this midwife was talking about how she went to work for this hospital, and the first day she was there, she was assisting with an abortion or in a place where the abortions were being done, and she and another male nurse pulled a sheet back and discovered a lot of clotted blood, and laying within this blood was a baby, and he was still breathing. The baby was still alive. The nurse came in and told her about the baby. The nurse told them to, quote, put it in a basin and wait. In other words, if you just leave them alone, they'll die. And of course, we've seen this time and time again. This is how we got started with the baby parts investigation. Our infiltrator had called because this had been happening with him on a regular basis. He was being told to take parts out of these babies who were supposedly aborted, but they were still alive. And he'd open up the chest and see the heart still beating, and then he's taking out the parts.
This infuriates me. I feel like my face is getting red.
Yeah, well, you should have been there.
I know.
Anyway, they started talking to the little boy, stroking his body through the drape they'd put on him, and he lasted for 45 minutes, and then he finally stopped breathing, and they left him on a surgical tray. And you know, these things sound like, well, this doesn't really go on. It goes on every day, all the time.
All the time.
And
It's so horrific. It's hard to process,
Yeah.
but we have to understand the reality that it is happening every day.
let me tell you something, Melissa, I'll tell you something about that. Something very clever the pro-aborts have figured out. They figured this out, I think, relatively recently. The more horrible they are, the fewer people believe us when we talk about it. So we talk about these sort of things, and people think, oh, those pro-lifers, that can't be really going.
happening.
That's not happening. And the pro-aborts, this is very clever what they've done. They have figured out that the worse behavior they engage in, the fewer people believe us when we talk about it.
Paint us as the crazies, not them for doing the killing.
Right, exactly. It's the shoot the messenger, right? Shoot the people who bring you the message, not the people who did it. But I want to bring up, as it relates to this issue, our interview with the 3 girls down in Houston that work for Douglas Carpin.
It was chilling.
Yeah. Y'all have watched it, obviously. And you're right there nearby where he is. You and I sat across this close to these women as they sat there and talked about this happening on a routine basis.
Yes.
Babies come out alive.
Yes.
And they were even laughing about it sometimes and joking. And, you know, oh, you remember the one, she was walking to the bathroom and the baby just fell out on the floor and was kicking around.
Right.
And talking about pushing their thumb through the baby's thorax to kill him,
Or through their soft spot.
or jam a forceps through the soft spot of their head to kill them. And that woman talking about how Carpin would grab the baby with the forceps and the baby's toes and fingers would stick out, you know, and react to that. Now, there have always been situations, and they used to call it in the abortion industry, we've got tapes from them at National Abortion Federation conferences, where they used to call this the dreaded complication. The dreaded complication was not killing the woman, it was the baby coming out alive, which I thought spoke volumes about these people. It used to be extremely rare. Now it's very common. And the question becomes, why is it common now when it was rare in past years? And the reason is, and people think you're nuts when you say this, but I promise you it's the solid gold fact. The reason it's common now is it's intentional. Now you say, well, why would an abortionist want to intentionally have a live birth? Because that creates a mess, right? And, you know, they were talking about having black garbage bags sitting around full of babies, and they'd open them up and look in there and talk about how big they are.
were, yeah.
And Carpin joking about it, say, if I start killing them any bigger, they're going to be old enough to vote. He's
Right.
making jokes about this. I don't think we even put that in the DVD, but they were talking to you and me about it. So why would they do it intentionally? It's very simple. In my book, Siege, I talk about the financial realities. Today, first trimester abortions are not profitable. They're losers. They're charging the same thing for a first trimester abortion today they were charging 40 years ago. They have not been able to raise prices, and I talk about in the book the reasons they haven't been able to raise prices. But the fact is, first trimester abortions are not profitable. It's second and thirds that are profitable. So the big money in abortion clinics today is birth control pills, STD treatments, and late-term abortions. So a lot of these guys now have started moving into doing late-term abortions. Carpin didn't used to do them many years ago. He moved into them. So did other people start moving into doing these late-term abortions. The problem with later-term abortions is you increase your malpractice exposure because you're using bigger instruments, the woman's further along, you're having to dilate the cervix more. Basically, you're using bigger instruments and the baby is harder to dismember inside the uterus. Mm-hmm. That increases your risk of malpractice. Mm-hmm. But if you can just do whatever it's necessary to cause that woman to give birth to that baby, right. The baby comes out nice and smooth and easy. Mm-hmm. You kill the baby outside the womb.
You still get your money.
You still get the money, except now the money is not $300 or $400 for a first trimester abortion. It's $5,000 to $10,000 for a second or third trimester abortion.
The woman's knocked out, so she doesn't hear the first cry from the baby.
She doesn't care.
And the
She's out.
unfortunate reality also is that you now have this beautiful whole baby to harvest to make more profit.
More profits
right.
with. Yeah. As counterintuitive as it sounds, they're actually doing this on purpose. And they're doing it to insulate themselves against malpractice claims. That baby swishes out, and they use some terms like that shit. We'd hear the baby swoosh out, mm-hmm. and just fall out on the floor, or we couldn't hold on to him, or he'd hold them up, talking about how big they were, and that sort of thing. They're doing it on purpose to insulate themselves against malpractice.
And how the baby clenched his pinky.
Yep, he's talking about doing an abortion on one of the babies, and the baby grabbed his finger.
Right.
Don't tell me these people aren't mentally unhinged. I keep saying this, and people think I'm nuts. I've had pro-lifers say, you're crazy to think all these people are nuts. You can't work in this environment and do these things and see what those girls were telling us, and I challenge anybody to watch that. You can go on YouTube and watch it, or you can get a video from us and watch it. You're not going to tell me these women aren't unhinged, because they are.
Mm-hmm. And you're so right about it being so incredulous that the pro-aborts think nobody's going to believe us, because it is so crazy, and it's the kind of material that you would see in satire like Family Guy or South Park, but the stuff is actually real. These practices in the abortion industry, they're actually happening.
It's like a movie script for some kind of chainsaw movie.
Right.
And you think, oh, that ain't
horror
real.
story.
That didn't really happen. Okay, Texas Chainsaw. This stuff is happening.
And to think this guy was not indicted. Nothing.
Well, that's because of the corruption of the Harris County District Attorney's Office. He ought to be in prison right now. He ought to be at least awaiting trial right now. These people are whacked out. Speaking of that, now I got to be very careful here, because how I word this. Y'all are probably too young to remember when Bill Clinton got in all his hijinks with Monica Lewinsky.
Unfortunately, I'm not.
You're not too young.
I'm not either.
Really, you remember all this?
I do.
Y'all remember who Nina Burley was? She was the White House correspondent for Time magazine, and she was assigned to cover the Clinton White House. When all this happened with Monica Lewinsky, this woman's saying, this is no big deal. Don't make a big deal out of this. She said, I would happily give Bill Clinton a euphemism for oral sex, just to thank him for keeping abortion legal. Now, this is supposed to be a reporter, a journalist, right? And she said this in a television interview. I think it was on CNN, if I'm not, or MSNBC. But she was on there being interviewed. I would happily give Bill Clinton oral sex, and that's not what she said, but to thank him for keeping abortion legal. About this same time, there was all these people saying, well, you guys are defending Bill Clinton over some of the most horrific sexual harassment. If this were a college president doing this rather than president of the United States, you'd have him brought up on charges. He'd be roasted. You just take the Monica Lewinsky situation and put that when you were going to Texas A&M. If the president of Texas A&M had been caught doing that, what would have happened to him? He's gone. He's out. You never hear from him again.
Thank God it was Bill. It was President Gates.
Right, and not Bill Clinton.
Right.
About this same time, Gloria Steinem, the so-called icon of feminism, right? Mm-hmm. Well, she comes out and she says, really, Bill Clinton is the kind of man women should all look up to. We should all want men to be like that. Because, she said, when we've interviewed a lot of women that he's been around. They said any time that he groped a woman, if she said no, he stopped.
How about that?
So therefore,
And he's married.
What
Go.
a novel idea.
right.
Ooh.
And so in other words, she invented the every guy gets one grope rule. That's the new, didn't y'all know that? Every guy gets one grope.
We're shaking our heads and laughing.
Right. My assistant at that time, Zentra, she came in one day, she was fuming about this. She got so mad about this and said, this one grope rule, and that Gloria Steinem, this icon of feminism, establishes this thing. She was just livid about it. But anyway, you think this stuff has stopped, right? Well, recently, another feminist mouthpiece, a woman named Rebecca Schoenkopf, was quoted in a Wonkette article. She was talking about Bill Clinton and why feminists aren't coming down on Hillary Clinton for defending her husband over the Monica Lewinsky stuff and other things that went on. And make no mistake about this, Bill Clinton forcibly raped Juanita Broaddrick. There is no doubt about that. If you go back and read the stuff that happened, she even said it. It's what's called an outcry statement in the law. She said it the day that it happened, and she had witnesses that said that she said it the day it happened. He forcibly raped Juanita Broaddrick. Quote, to sum it up, I think Bill Clinton could very well have raped Juanita Broaddrick. That doesn't make him an evil man or irredeemable. I'm Catholic. We're all forgiven if we're sorry. And Broaddrick says Bill Clinton personally called her up to apologize. It doesn't even necessarily make him a bad feminist, later, once he stops doing all that, unquote. What kind of mental hijinks do you have to go through? What kind of hoops do you have to jump through in your mind to make a statement like this?
Well, it goes back to the media for me again. What kind of group of individuals continues to allow these types of quotes to be published, to try to normalize this type of behavior, to normalize abortion? But yet,
Or to hire him as journalists.
yeah, but yet when we as pro-lifers want to speak up about the truth, or when we want to really take a position to defend women and to protect the sanctity of marriage and sexuality and right relationships, we're silenced.
They
No.
have to be normalized. They don't have anything else to go off of. This is
it. This is all they got.
It's a
Now,
slippery
you think
slope.
this is not still playing out? Last year, Hillary Clinton put on had a website out about her campaign, and she had her positions on all these various issues, and one of them was under a heading called Campus Sexual Assault. And here's what it said. This is last year. Quote, I want to send a message to every survivor of sexual assault. Don't let anyone silence your voice. You have the right to be heard. You have the right to be believed, and we're with you, unquote. That's what she said. Then people started bringing up this Juanita Broaddrick thing. In February, they changed that website and took out the line, you have the right to be believed. They took that line out of that. It's still on there now, but that line is gone.
What a slap in the face to every single woman who has been a survivor of sexual assault.
Let's say you had a woman who was, say, lower socioeconomic group, and she had an abusive husband, but she had a bunch of kids, and she stuck with him, and he was abusive, and he was beating her up, and every once in a while she's getting in the emergency room or whatever. And this woman said, well, I believe in you, stand by your man, the old Tammy Wynette song or whatever, stand by your man. They would be the first ones to rag on her. Mm-hmm. But when it's Bill Clinton, or if it's Al Gore, or any other radically pro-abortion male, the Kennedys, Ted Kennedy, he killed a girl, drowned her, and then tried to swim away from it and claim he had nothing to do with it. They stand by their man. They are the ultimate stand by their man. And if you think about it a little bit, it's almost like they're in this sort of unhealthy relationship. We would all say that if a woman was in that relationship where a man continually abuses her or her kids, but she sticks with him and loves him, that's an unhealthy, dependent relationship, right? For women to do that. That's what they're doing. This is no different than that. How is it different? You tell me. Y'all are all three female. Y'all tell me, how is that different?
It's not.
It's not any different. It's the same exact thing.
But Hillary's getting something out of it. Hillary's getting something out of all of these supporters and followers helping her to get to the place of power that she wants. These folks that are touting her and Bill, they're getting what they want because they get to continue to have the right to kill the unborn. So it's just a mutual, sharing of disgrace.
And we're seeing more and more people coming out here now and trying to normalize having an abortion. They tried the little deal with the T-shirts, I had an abortion. And I suspect those things are piled up in warehouses somewhere. They're making car rags out of them or something, car polishing rags. But they're doing more and more of that stuff, trying to normalize it. And they're meeting with no success because abortion has a stigma that's never going away. Never going to go away.
It will always have a stigma because you are killing an innocent human.
Yeah, that's right. That's the truth they can't get away from. But the mental gymnastics that they have to go through in order to justify some of the things they do are mind-boggling when you think about it. A couple more things here I want to discuss. We're running out of time as usual. We're always out of time. Have y'all noticed that? Now, you've been on, this is your 4th show, right? Have you noticed we always run out with things still to talk about?
It's a common theme.
That's the way it works.
Hey guys, if you want a powerful speaker for your next pro-life event, someone who can deliver a hard-hitting, inspirational message, I've got a deal for you. Mark is now available for a limited number of engagements, and if you watch LifeTalk or read his articles, you already know his unique perspective on the pro-life battle is like no one else's. If that sounds like what you're looking for, just call me, Renee Hobbs, at 940-380-8800 between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday. You can also reach me by email at renee@prolifeamerica.com. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. Together, you and I are going to make your banquet or convention one that people will be talking about for years.
I saw an article here the other day about adoption. And this pro-life writer had written an article saying, why isn't adoption exercised more often as an alternative to abortion? And I've talked about this before. And this woman had just come up with done some research and come up with some new statistics. For every baby placed for adoption in America, 36 couples are waiting to adopt. And as a father of an adopted child, standing right over here to my left, right, minding her own business, which is very unusual for her. But anyway, as the father of an adopted child, nobody is a bigger supporter of adoption than me. But something the pro-life movement needs to recognize here. And this is what this woman, I'd like to sit down with her and talk to her about this. Adoption is not an option to abortion, and is not an option to abortion.
It's never presented.
Well, even if it is, it's not an option. For a very simple reason. And this is one of these areas where pro-lifers need to get their minds thinking in the right direction. When a woman is pregnant and thinking about an abortion, the problem isn't the baby. The problem is the pregnancy.
It's the body.
And I've made this hypothetical before. Let's say you could go into a CPC. Let's say you developed a pill that if a woman was pregnant or a girl was pregnant, and let's say she was 8 weeks pregnant, and she's at a CPC, and she's saying, well, I'm going to have an abortion. If I get a positive pregnancy test, I'm having an abortion. And we had this pill, and we said, look, we'll give you this pill. And what will happen is this pill will accelerate the gestational stage. And you won't be giving birth to a baby 7.5 months from now. You'll be giving birth to a baby in 30 minutes. In 30 minutes, this pill will make your baby fairly matured. It'll come out healthy. We'll take the baby and place the baby for adoption. She'd go with that. What she doesn't want to do is be pregnant. Adoption does not end that problem because it doesn't happen right then. It happens way down the road. And we've run a CPC, and we've had this discussion with them, especially in the case of young girls. Adoption is not seen as an option for them because it doesn't solve their problem. Their problem is they don't want to be pregnant.
And in addition to that, the abortion industry sells adoption as something that is such a hypothetical, such an unknown. that it's almost the more compassionate, even though
Right.
twisted compassion, compassionate thing to do to kill the baby, because what if the baby ends up in the system with this terrible situation? Well, it's all these unknowns, all these variables, so we're just going to kill the baby now because that's the more compassionate thing to do.
Yeah, it's the twisted logic that these people have. And that's an example of what I call the bastardization of compassion. Because for you to sit there and say, well, this baby might be unhappy 15 years from now, so let's just kill him now, be done with it, and, get it over with, and that's the more compassionate thing. He'll never know the difference, right? It's mind-boggling, but I think we've got to get to the point in the pro-life movement where we recognize that, yes, we need to offer adoption as an option. Every CPC needs to be hooked up with some adoption agency that they can do that for. But in most cases, it's not going to be an option for that girl because her problem is she doesn't want to be pregnant. If she's very young, she may have people she doesn't want to know that she's sexually active. She's got people she doesn't want to know that she's pregnant. She's got people she doesn't want to know that she's had an abortion. Adoption doesn't solve any of those problems. It seems on the surface like such an obvious answer. You don't want to have a baby? Hell, we'll take the baby. You don't have to have the baby. We'll take the baby, and you don't have to worry about it. That's not the problem. She doesn't want to go between now and then. That's why if you could compress that with this magic pill, like I said, which will never exist, but if you could compress that, she'd do it. There's no doubt in my mind. You could get this girl to take that pill and say, that'll compress it down to where you're going to give birth in the next 30 minutes, and we'll take the baby, and we've got a home that's wanting that baby right now. These girls would do that in a heartbeat.
Very selfish on their part.
Majority of women who choose to find other parents for their baby through the adoption process, they're not teenagers. Because it is a selfless decision, thinking about the best needs for your baby. They tend to be women in their 20s and in their 30s, not so much on the teenage end of the spectrum.
Yeah. So that's the reason. If anybody's ever questioning why adoption is not a better option to abortion, that's the reason. That's the bottom line. Anyway, another great show, guys. Another one under your belts. You still feeling okay?
I am feeling great.
You're ready to rock and roll with another show next week?
Sure am.
All right. That's all the time we have. Until next time, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how the killing stops. We'll see you next week.